Chiefs Kingdom, welcome into a brand new episode of the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports. My name is Jackson Durham. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. And today we are talking Combine. We're going to break down every single prospect that the Kansas City Chiefs have met with over the first 2 days. And my friends, they have been very busy, as have I, covering a lot of this on socials. Make sure you're locked in because we are your one-stop shop for Kansas City Chiefs news and rumors. We're posting a lot of shorts, a lot of clips of guys talking about the Kansas City Chiefs that I've been cutting up, getting those out. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you have your notifications on for everything you need around the Chiefs Kingdom. But 21 prospects met with over the first 2 days. And that's only the ones we have confirmed. I'm sure there's a couple other ones we haven't 100% heard about. Remember, what's interesting about this process is the teams themselves are not going to tell you, hey, we met with Rueben Bain or whatever. Rueben Bain has to say when asked by media, or if he wants to do so unprompted, I met with the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're going to go through the list of 21 guys that have confirmed that they had a meeting with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I think about them as prospects, especially if they're not guys we've already talked about on the channel. For guys we've already hit on pretty heavily on the channel, I'm going to keep it brief so we can roll through all 21 of them. Understand, we're kind of got to do a lightning round to get through all of these guys in a reasonable manner. But let's get started. With that in mind, we're on a time crunch today, my friends. We've got to get into this thing. Let's get started with the guys who did not participate in the Combine, but did confirm meetings with the Kansas City Chiefs, starting with top prospect Rueben Bain out of Miami, one of the top guys available in this draft class, obviously played in the national championship, really made a big name for himself for those that already didn't know him in those games, tested pretty well, he did not go through the testing at the Combine. I was thinking of somebody else who we're going to talk about in a minute when I was thinking of testing. Well, opted not to test at the Combine today, but will test at his pro day. Did say, though, that he met with Miami, he went to Miami, that he met with the Kansas City Chiefs, actually confirmed this to our team out in Indianapolis. Take a listen to this clip of Rueben Bain here, and then we'll get right back into it.
Interactions was real good. I felt like I had a real strong interview playing on that team, just in general with all the history it had in the previous years. And since I was growing up and what I could see, it's a blessing.
So like I said, no drills for Bain at the NFL Combine today. Did not go through the testing with either the defensive tackles or the edges. We've talked about him a good deal, so I'll keep it brief. But the primary takeaways is he's a big-bodied edge defender. I think he's extremely talented, and I think he's also flexible to interior defensive line, depending on where you would ultimately want to deploy him. I think he can be highly effective at either of those positions. I think he's a really great fit for Spags' scheme. Next up, Oklahoma guy who the Chiefs had a meeting with, Mason Thomas. He confirmed this extremely talented edge defender out of Oklahoma. You guys know I am a huge fan of the Sooners, so I was pretty excited to see when Mason Thomas was on the list. And I think it's a great decision by the Kansas City Chiefs. Injury concerns are definitely a factor with him. He missed some time in 2025, but when he was on the field, he was, in my opinion, and I'm a little biased, that's why I admit it, I'm an Oklahoma Sooners fan, I think he was the most effective edge defender in the entire SEC. He gets after the quarterback with authority. I always think back to the snap in the Auburn game. It's got to have it moment for the Oklahoma Sooners. He tells the entire defensive line, I've got this, and does. Nobody else even rushes. Auburn can't stop him. 5-on-1, and he gets a sack of Jackson Arnold. This dude he's a beast. He's an absolute beast. Another one that's pretty exciting, Dominique Orange, also known as Big Citrus from Iowa State, and before that from Kansas City. A KC local, went to North Kansas City High School, graduated from there. Day 2 projection, he met with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a very, very fun interview. Watch out for a couple of clips of him on the channel over the next few days. Did not test at the Combine, but the measurables on him, They're huge. There's a reason why they call this dude Big Citrus, and it's not just because his last name is orange. 6'4", 325-pound defensive tackle. That is a run stuffer if I have ever heard of it. Anthony Lucas. Haven't dove too much into the tape on Anthony Lucas, edge defender out of USC, but from what I have seen, he looks like a solid project pick, as somebody that you would want to bring in as a long-term developmental guy. Not very productive at USC, but has all the traits you're looking for from a modern edge defender at 6'5", 256 pounds with 33.5-inch arms. He did not test at the combine either. Again, not super productive, could be a developmental piece for the long term though. Let's talk about, you know what? I totally missed this on Rueben Bain. As I'm looking through my notes here, I see we forgot to talk about his arm length. He did get measured. Obviously, that's been one of the big narratives around Rueben Bain. I'm not really sure how it got past me. His arms came in at 31/8, which, you know, you'd like them to be a little bit longer, but I do think, and I think Ben Solak actually had a pretty good piece on this for ESPN, so I'll give him a little bit of credit here for saying this. It's kind of an overrated narrative to some degree, the whole idea that arm length is the end-all, be-all of edge defenders. There are some really solid edge defenders in NFL history that have had shorter arms, and I especially think because of Rueben Bain's flexibility to interior defensive line, if that's what you wanted to do with him, where arm length is significantly less important, that's not as big of a concern for me as I think it would be for some other people, or at least other people have drummed it up to be. But anyway, that's going to round out everybody that did not participate in testing at the combine. Now we're going to switch gears to everybody that the Chiefs met with that did participate in testing at the combine. And remember, there's going to be some names on this that we get to towards the end that didn't have the opportunity to test yet. So we'll talk about those guys. I'll kind of reset the expectations when we get there. But know that those guys are coming as well in our list of 21. But David Bailey. This is an exciting name. I know a lot of you guys are big on David Bailey. I think he's a fantastic player out of Texas Tech. Very, very productive in the Big 12 and extremely athletic. We'll talk about his testing in just 1 minute. But first, I want you to hear him talk about his meeting with the Kansas City Chiefs and about the impact that Patrick Mahomes had on the program at Texas Tech and whether or not he had the opportunity to chat with him yet.
It was just it was a comfortable meeting, man. I felt comfortable with them. They were extremely personal. We talked a little bit of ball, but I just felt comfortable. Yeah, I didn't really feel I didn't feel like stressed at all. They made me feel welcome. No, actually, I never met him. He was at one of our games, but I didn't get to catch him. I'm forever grateful for that walkthrough because that was a big step in my success. And I'm a visual learner, so we were always utilizing the walkthrough room. We were in there a lot, and I know that helped me a lot for sure.
Awesome stuff there from David Bailey. Really, really cool what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do at Texas Tech, even though Bailey hasn't had the opportunity to meet with him and thank him for it personally. Maybe there's a chance that is coming soon if he winds up in Kansas City. The way he tested today, I think a lot of Chiefs fans are going to want him. 4.5 40-yard dash, 1.62 10-yard split, 35-inch vertical, 10.9 broad. This dude is freaky athletic. There are some concerns on the tape. I don't think he's a particularly good run defender at the end of the day, but I think there are other ways that we can compensate for that. I think if you're looking for a guy who can come in and elevate pass rush, David Bailey absolutely is that. And the Kansas City Chiefs, as we have said over and over and over again on this channel, absolutely need that. And hey, if you're a Chiefs fan, something you might need as well before we get into the rest of the prospects in today's video is a shirt for St. Patrick's Day. We've got them for you here on the Chiefs Report. It's our first official merch run as part of an ongoing program at Chat Sports to get some more merch for you guys. And our St. Patrick's Day drinking team tees are now available at chatsports.com/KC Green. That link is going to be in the comments for you. It'll be the pinned comment. If you want to pick up one of those t-shirts, absolutely go check them out. They are fantastic. Let's get back into the prospects, though. Like I said, we got a lot to get through. Peter Woods, Clemson defensive tackle. You go back to last season, this guy, another meeting for the Kansas City Chiefs, he was getting top 3 to 5 draft projections at the start of, I said go back to last season, you could go, but at the start of the season, really, was when they kind of stopped. Clemson obviously has a major down year this season. Peter Woods himself didn't have a great season either. This kind of applies to another Clemson player who we'll talk about in a minute as well. But Tracy, very, very athletic, not very productive, and a great build on this guy as well. He didn't test today at the NFL Combine. I should have had him in my not testing group. That's totally my bad. But he is a pretty good athlete, and he will test at Clemson's Pro Day. Keldrick Falk up next. This is a guy who feels very, very Chiefs-esque to me. I think if there is a Chiefs edge defender in this class, it might be Keldrick Falk. And he himself, he told our guys at the Combine about how exciting it would be to get to team with Chris Jones. Check out this clip of Keldrick.
Man, that'd be crazy dangerous. Like, Chris Jones is a freak athlete, and I kind of consider myself a freak athlete too. So we gonna, if that happens, we gonna be a dangerous duo.
Awesome stuff. And like I said, he might get the opportunity to do it. I think he'd be a little bit of a reach at number 9. I do think there are concerns with Keldrick Falk's ability to get after the passer. He just wasn't very productive at the SEC level at Auburn last season at the end of the day when it comes to pressure on the quarterback, when it comes to getting sacks, when it comes to just finishing the play. He did dominate in a game against Oklahoma. But at the end of the day, what makes me feel like he could be a Chiefs guy is he is a Spags build to a T. Just a big body edge defender who is very athletic. I think he did do a little bit of testing, 35-inch vertical, 9'9" broad. I think he's going to do more testing during his Auburn Pro Day, but a pretty athletic edge defender at the end of the day. I think he could have broad jumped better. Not the best broad result for him, but someone who on film, you absolutely see the traits. But again, question marks for me personally about how much of a needle mover he can be in the pass rush. Just was never very productive in that element for Auburn. Fantastic run defender. Really, really good in that element. You have no questions on that front. But can he be a guy who can consistently get after quarterbacks, get quarterbacks on the ground, something that this front seven needs to improve at? I think there's questions there, absolutely. Jayshawn Barham, Michigan linebacker. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I got to dive more into the tape on Jayshawn Barham, but I was talking to a couple of our guys who cover Michigan about him, and to quote one of them, he is a dude. Just flies around the field. Fantastic tackler. Really good coverage linebacker. 4.64 40-yard dash for him. He tested very well. 7th among linebackers. 1.61 10-yard split. That's getting out the gates in a hurry if you're not familiar with those. Vertical could have been a little bit better, which is surprising considering how fast he was. Usually those two things are kind of tied together in terms of just overall explosiveness. 33-inch vert there. But he did broad at 10.3. So there you definitely see the explosiveness. I'm wondering kind of what went wrong for him on that vertical jump. It was just not something he does very often. But Jayshawn Barham was a confirmed meeting for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's an interesting prospect. Something I have heard about him just from watching the combine drills. He's somebody who could be flexible to a number of different positions. He could potentially be an inside linebacker, an outside linebacker. He kind of played a hybrid of those roles for Michigan, as well as even potentially an edge defender. He actually went through combine drills and testing with the edge defender group. So potentially hearing from NFL teams that that's where they might see him long-term at the next level. But somebody we'll continue to talk about as he is connected, or if he is connected really, to the Kansas City Chiefs in the future. But overall, from what I'm hearing, pretty solid player. Denied Dennis Sutton, someone I am very familiar with, highly productive edge at Penn State. Another guy who's getting more first-round projections last season before a down year for Penn State as a program. I still think there's a lot of talent with Denied Dennis Sutton. 20.5 sacks and 126 pressures over the last 3 seasons at Penn State, and he tested very, very well today. Measurables are off the charts with him. 6'6", 256 pounds, 33.5-inch arms, and 10 1/8 hands. Just massive, massive man. 4.63 40 at that size. 1.63 10-yard split. 39.5-inch vertical jump. 10-11 broad. 6'9" 3 cone. These are First round edge defender stats and first round edge defender traits. I mean, I like a lot of Denai Dennis Sutton's tape. I think he's somebody who moved his draft stock in a very, very positive direction today. I think the Chiefs were maybe thinking about him as a second or third round draft prospect. I think now he might be an early day 2 guy. He might be even potentially a late round 1 guy if someone could. I could see someone falling in love with this. It's good production at a very high level of college football, and the athletic traits are exactly where you want them to be. So somebody to watch for sure. I don't think a target at 9, but potentially an early second round target. TJ Parker. Another guy like Peter Woods, who was getting that first round hype last year at the start of this season, and another guy like Peter Woods who just hasn't produced at the level you'd like to see from a first round draft pick. That's why that hype kind of pulls back. Daniel Jeremiah has him as his 36th prospect in the class, mostly highlighting how much of a project he is at the end of the day, and the athletic testing speaks to that. 4.68 40 was second among edge defenders, but what's really impressive is the 1.61 10-yard split. That is really getting out the gates at his size. 34-inch vertical as well, and a 10 flat broad. Very, very athletic player. Again, you're seeing a trend here, right? The Chiefs very interested in these athletic edge defenders, in these bigger body guys, in people that they can develop for the long term. So that, I think, and again, it's not, and I think this is something else that gets maybe lost in the shuffle with the combine. We're not just locked in on defense right now. It's just that they've only had the opportunity to get looks at defensive guys, or really, I guess, that defensive guys have only had the opportunity to tell us that they've gotten looks at them. Some tight ends have had opportunities as well. We do have a tight end on our list that we'll talk about. But if it feels very defensive heavy, that's just the nature of the way things go at the combine. But it does feel like at 9, especially when we go back to, if you listen to our video that we did not yesterday, but the day before that, on Brett Veach's combine and the takeaways from that, we highlighted that clip where he talks about the trade-offs between best player available, highlighting that there are some very talented, is the word I'm looking for, players at non-premium value positions. He said some of the best players in this draft class are at non-premium positions. Mentioned specifically Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, and Sonny Styles. All of these guys, maybe not necessarily your traditional top 10 draft picks, but they're just so talented. How do you weigh that versus the premium value positions, your edge defenders at the end of the day? They're not looking for a quarterback, but in the category of those quarterback style positions, receivers are up there as well, offensive tackles. And the answer that he gave is interesting. He highlights the need to focus on who you can get in free agency. And you can get running backs in free agency. We've talked a lot about Jeremiah Love. I think Jeremiah Love would be an unbelievable pick for this team. I do think he could elevate this offense to new heights. I've said that before. I'll continue to say it. But it does seem like when you look at the guys that they're interviewing, when you look at the things that Brett Veach is saying, that the trend here does seem to be pointing towards, let's get better at getting after the passer. Let's get better in the front 7 with a premium value edge defender, most likely. So that's probably where we'll be focusing over the next couple of days as well. One last target here for you that did participate in drill, or 2 more, both Texas Tech guys. Shout out to producer Xavier Pond, who is a huge Texas Tech fan. Jacob Rodriguez, ultra productive at Texas Tech. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the name, did receive some Heisman attention and tested extremely well. 4.57 40-yard dash, 1.6 in the 10-yard, 38.5 vertical, and 10.1 broad. And he looked really good going through the drills. Honestly, we've talked about him before as a potential target in the mid-rounds for the Kansas City Chiefs as a maybe long-term heir or long-term successor at interior linebacker, especially if you can't keep Leo Chanel, which I do think is something that this team should be very proactive about trying to do. But very good day for Jacob Rodriguez, who has met with the Kansas City Chiefs. Another Texas Tech product who has met with the Kansas City Chiefs and was ultra productive is Lee Hunter. I think he's a very, very good player, transferred into Texas Tech from UCF, and when I was doing my transfer scouting, he was one of my favorite guys at the end of the day. I thought he was great at UCF. I thought he was a guy who had a good chance to blossom into a great player at Texas Tech, and he absolutely did that this season. Testing was great today as well. 5.18 in the 40. That was second among defensive tackles. 1.79 10-yard split. 21.5-inch vert and 8.4 broad. But at the end of the day, explosiveness for defensive tackles, not super, super valuable. But really, really good day for Lee Hunter. Really, really good day for Jacob Rodriguez. Lot of names there for the defensive linemen and the linebackers that the Kansas City Chiefs have met with. Now we're going to get into the other positions. The defensive backs and the tight ends who spoke with media today, spoke with some of our guys, and confirmed meetings with the Kansas City Chiefs, but have not had the opportunity to do the testing yet. We'll talk about their testing results later this week when they actually come in. Tacario Davis, though, had a confirmed meeting with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's an interesting prospect at corner, 6'4", 200 pounds out of Arizona. Before that, he was at Washington. And he, in my book, is the definition of looks like Tarzan and plays like Jane. And I don't like to say things like that because I know it's kind of derogatory. I'm not trying to be mean, but I had the opportunity to watch Tacario in person against TCU. I live in the Dallas area, and it wasn't a good game for Tacario. And when I turn the tape on with him, I see a lot of that when he goes up against very high-level receivers. The traits are there, absolutely. He has things he can't teach, but at the end of the day, just not that great of a player when he's asked to match up against guys he's going to face at the NFL level, guys of that caliber. Almost the opposite story, D'Angelo Ponce. 5'9" corner who plays like he's 6'2", plays with like heart of a champion is the slogan for D'Angelo Ponce, just so much energy, so much willingness to put his body on the line, to go out there and try to make plays. I love the tape from Indiana. I loved the tape at James Madison. He is a guy that I have been high on for a while, but just super limited physically at the end of the day. But he's as limited physically as he is technically sound, as he is very experienced at the college level. I think he's a great player, but you have to acknowledge that there's serious bust risk there, just because at the end of the day, he's 5'9", and there is not a strong track record of NFL corners at that height at the end of the day. Brandon Cisse falls into the much more prototypical bucket of NFL corners at 6'190", and he actually spoke about his meeting with the Kansas City Chiefs to our team, so we're going to roll that clip for you guys now.
He's a great defensive coordinator, great defensive mind, very versatile. You see what he does with guys like Trent McDuffie, so it'd be great. Had a great meeting with those guys, and I look forward to seeing them back soon.
And he is to be honest with you, Cisse is an interesting guy to see come up because he reminds me of a lot of the edge defenders that we're evaluating. Just kind of a project. You see the traits, you see the athleticism with him. I think he's going to test very well. Obviously, he hasn't had the opportunity to do it, but the on-tape stuff, it absolutely shows. And at the end of the day, I weigh that a lot more than I weigh the testing. I think testing numbers are interesting. It's great to put numbers on things, see how they compare to other guys from the past, see if it checks out from what you see in the tape. But I'm always going to put more stock in what I see in the tape. And from what I see in the tape, he's very athletic. The arm length checks, the speed checks, but he's just not productive. Never a great ball hawk at the end of the day, not getting interceptions, not getting pass breakups, not a disruptive corner. So I would have questions about why exactly that happened. I hope that was something that they brought up in the meeting, kind of hammered him on, kind of forced him to answer that question of what prevented you from being more productive in the traditional sense for a corner? Why should we invest in you despite that lack of production? Speaking of lack of production, Jermod McCoy doesn't have any production in 2025 because he was injured. Tore his ACL, did meet with the Kansas City Chiefs, the corner out of Tennessee. But if you watched in 2024, if you watched Tennessee football, if you watched SEC football at all, I think there is a serious argument that Jermod McCoy was the best corner that played in the entire conference. He is extremely, extremely talented. We've talked about him a little bit before on the channel. So I'll keep it relatively brief, but obviously very high bust risk at the end of the day just because of the injury. Or I won't say very high, but significant bust risk because of the injury. You do worry, could that be something that haunts him for the rest of his career? We also have just not seen this guy play football in almost a calendar year, and he opted not to test. He already told reporters that he will not be going through testing at the NFL Combine, with there being a little bit of a quote out there about him not being fully ready to do it health-wise. I want to clarify, our guys were there, and they were able to inform me that that's a little misleading, the way that that's been reported. I want you guys to be as informed as I am. I want you to be an insider here. And what was actually said was, I don't feel ready to do it right now. It wasn't his body doesn't feel ready to do it. It's just he personally doesn't feel ready to do it right now, but that he has been cleared to do all of this stuff. So he could technically, I think he just wants more time to prep. I'm guessing he got cleared relatively recently, hasn't had a ton of time to get back into his training process, still probably shaking off the rust a little bit, wants to test at the best capability. I don't think anybody could blame him for that. This is a huge moment for you as an NFL prospect. I would want to nail every single one of my testings. I wouldn't want to do it in any sort of a physically limited state, or even if I'm not physically limited, just like I haven't been working out as consistently as I usually am. It's been a little while. I was going through physical therapy or whatever it may have been for Jermod McCoy. I think that's the context that is needed there. If you saw that quote, that I saw a lot of people who are pretty serious in the NFL space, who I usually wouldn't see doing stuff like this, that I would say is kind of clickbaity, maybe, retweeting that quote, which I don't think is very fair to Jermod McCoy. So I wanted to clarify things up there. I know we're getting long here, so I'm going to round things out. Last 4 or 5 guys on the list are guys whose tape I really have not gotten into too much. So we're just going to run through names, but I promise you I am diving into it very, very soon, and we will have more in-depth conversations about these gentlemen in the future. Eli Raridan, tight end from Notre Dame. Genesis Smith, who is a safety from Arizona. Bishop Fitzgerald and Kamari Ramsey both had meetings with the Kansas City Chiefs. They are both safeties from USC. And lastly, but absolutely not least, our guy Chandler Rivers, corner from Duke. All of those guys had meetings with the Kansas City Chiefs. One last time, we're going to run through the entire list of names, just in case anybody you missed. Rueben Bain Jr., R. Mason Thomas, Dominique Orange, Anthony Lucas, David Bailey, Peter Woods, Keldrick Falk, Jayshawn Barham, Denai Dennis Sutton, TJ Parker, Jacob Rodriguez, Lee Hunter, Takario Davis, D'Angelo Pons, Brandon Cisse, Jermod McCoy, Eli Raridan, Genesis Smith, Bishop Fitzgerald, Kamari Ramsey, and finally, Chandler Rivers. All had formal or informal meetings with the Kansas City Chiefs that were confirmed by our team out at the 2026 NFL Combine in Indianapolis. I appreciate you giving me almost a half hour of your time here tonight to talk about Kansas City Chiefs news around the NFL Combine. If you made it to this point in the video, I know you are a diehard Chiefs fan, and if you're not already subscribed, you absolutely should be. I'll see you in the next one.